Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Emma Wyatt. Thank you for joining us on the presentation today about becoming a trusted community development entity. This is part of a larger series, the Strategic Financing Services Speaker Series. In the CPAE webinar today, we will explore the crucial role that CDEs play when deploying new market tax credit allocations to support larger community initiatives and discuss the best practices for managing community relationships to ensure the greatest impact. I'm pleased to introduce our other speakers for today. Lena Wolf, who is a manager at Cherry Bekaert, and Jason Callahan, who's a senior manager at Cherry Bekaert. You'll hear from both Lena and Jason today, but I'll go ahead and kick us off. So I mentioned my name is Emma Wyatt. I'm the program manager for the Innovate Fund. We are a new market tax credit CDE based in Greenville, South Carolina, with a 6-state service area serving the Southeast. So let's just start with a brief background on the New Market Tax Credit Program. When the New Market Tax Credit Program was established, it was looking at the success of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which had been around previously to the new markets. The Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program did what it was supposed to do. It built low-income housing for folks in low-income communities across the United States. And the federal government said, we've done this great thing of building places for people to live. Now we need to build a place and for people to access community goods and services and quality places to work also within their own communities. And that's how the New Market Tax Credit Program was officially established. It started in the year 2000, and currently we're relying on recertifications of the program as part of the tax code, and perhaps a permanence bill is up for consideration this round. CDEs, or community development entities, were established as part of the New Market Tax Credit Program establishment. And the first CDEs we looked to in our communities were the CDFIs, the Community Development Financial Institutions, who had already built a strong track record of support in low-income communities and a good reputation of being a place that developers could go to learn to overcome market risk. So many CDEs you see today were originally CDFIs. The result of the New Market Tax Credit Program are funding projects that meet 4 criteria. The first criteria is that the project is located in a low-income community. New Market Tax Credit Program projects are designated as eligible, ineligible, or severely distressed based on census tract data. There are a lot of mapping tools where you can check to see if your project site qualifies as a New Market Tax Credit eligible site. There must be a demonstrated financial gap for a project. So we're looking for projects that likely would not happen without the support of the New Market Tax Credit. Capital expenditures of more than $5 million is usually our threshold for what we say is an eligible New Market Tax Credit Program project. So this is the biggest project happening in your community. It's not the $1 million downtown renovation. It's the $5 million large transformative community project happening in your town. And then significant community impact. I would say this is the most important part of a New Market Tax Credit deal, is that we're looking to see how this project will bring benefits to a community that previously didn't exist, such as new jobs or patients served or students served. So let's break down the industry players and get to the most important part of what our conversation is today, the community development entities. Community development entities work with the CDFI Fund, which is a department of the U.S. Treasury. CDEs write applications to the CDFI Fund every year for an allocation of new market tax credits. This is a very competitive application process. It often takes many months to put together an eligible and competitive application, and it relies on the CDE's track record of historic projects they've invested in previously and a pipeline of new deals that represent potential projects they would fund with new funding. If they're successful in receiving new market tax credit allocation, they don't exactly get cash in their bank account. They get the ability to sell tax credits. It's great to say that as of today, we know that the most recent allocation award has been announced. Last Thursday, $5 billion of new market tax credit funding was announced that over 100 CDEs received new market tax credit allocation. Now, there were over 100, close to 200 applicants for that application of allocation. So it was quite competitive. But the Innovate Fund thankfully received $40 million of new market tax credits. Now, we did not get a $40 million check. No one showed up at my house with one of those giant checks. Instead, what we get is the ability to sell $40 million worth of tax credits to large institutional investors. These are usually large banking institutions. You can think of Truist, Wells Fargo, Chase, Capital One, US Bank. All of these different entities and many, many others that I didn't list are interested in purchasing tax credits so they can receive a 39% reduction in their federal income tax liability that is taken over a 7-year period. The investor pays a market rate for those tax credits, which is how we fund our community development projects. We're able to take that market rate that investor paid and lend it to the community development projects at extremely favorable terms and rates. We won't get into the details today on what makes the new market tax credit so favorable, but just know that it is a gap funding tool, and the majority of the project costs, 70 to 80%, need to be sourced by the project sponsor. So whether that's through grants or bank debt, equity, bridge loans, the new market tax credit covers that last gap of the project's capital needs. What we're focusing on today, though, is the community development entity. How we select projects. What does an investment strategy look like? How do we remain competitive for additional new market tax credit allocation in the future? These are all questions we're going to get in today's presentation. The Innovate Fund, I manage the Innovate Fund. The Cherry Beckert is a minority owner in the Innovate Fund, so I work closely with the Cherry Beckert team to manage the processes for the Innovate Fund. We also have application writing services at the Cherry Beckert offices. We have consultants who help projects be identified throughout communities and work through the complicated closing process that is new market tax credits. We have compliance teams, and today, Lena and Jason, which are shown here, you'll hear from them about some of the work they do and how they're helping CDEs maintain this credibility and work through the management. And we are led by Laurel Tinsley, who is our managing director. We're going to go ahead and go through the first polling question. So we want to see who you are and why you're here today. Are you a CDE or you want to be a CDE? Is this conversation actually speaking to a goal that your organization has? Are you a Qualic B or potentially a Qualic B? Those Qualic Bs are those qualified active low-income community businesses, or the businesses that were actually using the new market tax credits to fund. You play another role that was described in the presentation in the last screen. Maybe you work at a bank and you're interested in purchasing tax credits, or perhaps you work at the CDFI fund and you can share your secrets about the process. Or you're just here for the CPE credit, which is totally fine too. We're welcoming everybody's participation. All right. Most of you are just here for the CPE, so hopefully you can get something out of this, or at least walk away with understanding that being a CDE is more than just managing a small company. It's definitely a lot of work to look at different investment considerations. But we do have some CDEs and Qualic Bs here today too, so glad to have you here. So let's get into the intricacies of a CDE. What are all of the things that make this more than just a small business? What makes it our day a little more difficult, I guess? The first thing we'll discuss is a CDE's investment strategy. So every CDE across the country has a unique investment strategy, and it's guided by a variety of documents and organizational principles. There are about 200 CDEs who are active in the new market tax credit industry. And like I said, recently, only 104 of us received allocation. So we have to remain with an active investment strategy that keeps us competitive for additional allocation. The first thing I'll note is our allocation agreement. The new market tax credit allocation agreement reflects what we say we will agree to in our application. So in the most recent application for new market tax credits, the Innovate Fund mentioned that we will prioritize putting half of our dollars, if we're successful, into underserved states. This is something that didn't just make us look better on paper, it's actually something we think we can do, and we'd be competitive in the market by offering additional services to states that are historically underserved. So it's actually something that when we receive our new allocation agreement, it'll be written down and we'll be required to put that certain percentage of dollars into underserved states. There are many other investment considerations that are outlined in this allocation agreement, but just know sometimes our hands are tied with what we agree to in our application for how we're able to spend our money. The next is that new market tax credit application. There are things written in the application that can make you a more successful candidate for potential new market tax credit allocation. But not all the time is it easy to reach those goals. So as your organization applies for new market tax credit allocation, it's great to be really cognizant of the things that you say in your application do impact how you can spend your money. So you can't just check the box because it might get you more points. It's something that you know that your organization would be able to achieve. CDEs all have different parent entities. Like I mentioned before, the Innovate Fund is partially owned by Cherry Beckert, but our majority owner is the Greenville Local Development Corporation, which is a local nonprofit to the Greenville, South Carolina region, who focuses on workforce and economic development for economic development growth in and around Greenville, South Carolina. And so our mission and our vision for the Innovate Fund is largely shaped by our two owners. Other CDEs are managed by nonprofits, for example, that might have a very specific service. Other CDEs are managed and owned by banks who might participate in multiple aspects of the new market tax credit program. Some are for-profit entities like the Innovate Fund. Others might be tied to community action agencies. We all have different ownership structures which impact how we're making investment strategies and decisions. And then target regions. The Innovate Fund has historically been a large provider of new market tax credits to the Appalachian region. In fact, out of all CDEs in the country, we've provided the third highest amount of dollars to projects within the ARC. The ARC is representative of 13 states and 480 some counties, and that is bigger than any state in the United States except for California and Texas. So that's been a strategy of ours in our history, is targeting projects that are located in this 13-state geography. We look at projects here as higher on our scoring criteria than a project, say, in not in Appalachia. Other CDEs have very specific target regions as well. Some CDEs only serve one city as part of their investment strategy. CDEs can be local, regional, statewide, or national serving. And as I mentioned before, the Innovate Fund, we are a 6-state service area. So although we prioritize projects in Appalachia, we look at projects across all 6 states. Now, I thought this was a neat representation of common investment considerations for the Innovate Fund specifically. I took my pipeline of over 150 projects over the past few years and put together a word cloud of all the descriptions that we get from the project description and the impact that project will have on the community, whether it be job creation or health and wellness. And this is the actual word cloud that was created from my pipeline that I keep active on a Monday.com account. You can see some words really showing up big as part of our investment considerations. Underserved, I mentioned that before, but there are 10 states designated by the CDFI fund every year as underserved. These are states that have received a lower amount of new market tax credit allocation in compared to the amount of low-income people who live in that state. The Innovate Fund has that 6-state service area, and 3 of those 6 are underserved states. So we prioritize investments made to these underserved states. Quality jobs. This is always big for the Innovate Fund's investment criteria. We look at 2 different types of projects when we're making investment selections. One is the creation of quality jobs. So we have a lot of manufacturers in our track record who are creating new jobs in their community and often paying great wages and providing really great employment benefits. We also have a second criteria for analyzing a project, and that is health and wellness. So that's where you see some other things in our common investment considerations bubble here. Training is a big part of the Innovate Fund's considerations for investments. We look for workforce training offered to employees as a benefit that is required for people who are saying they're creating jobs with the Innovate Fund's allocation. And there's those softer outcomes, medical or meals. How are we serving the community through a project? We analyze that in our pipeline as well. I mentioned our focus on Appalachian counties. Non-metro is another consideration. Projects can be considered non-metro, minor metro, or major metro. The Innovate Fund has historically done minor metro and non-metro investments, so that's something we'd like to track when we're considering whether a project is up to snuff for our new markets allocation. And then deeper distress is something that we're just now starting to track. I mentioned before that the new market tax credit eligibility is census tract based. Currently, there are 3 designated census tract types for new market tax credit investment: eligible, not eligible, or severely distressed. As you can imagine, severely distressed represents communities who have the highest amount of poverty rate, lowest median family income, and highest unemployment rates. However, recently the CDFI fund has not announced officially, but has discussed many times, adding a 4th investment criteria, which would be deeper distress, which is even more distressed than the severely distressed communities. So there's not a lot of deeper distress census tracts throughout our service area, but we find the concentration mostly in those Appalachian communities that we were discussing earlier, who have histories of loss of coal industry or substance abuse and have left the communities in a deeper distress characteristic. We're going to move to polling question 2, so get your phones out or get on your laptop again. Are you aware of any new market tax credit deals in your community? You might be surprised, actually, and there's ways that you can look it up and take a look at whether or not the building you perhaps work in might have been a new market tax credit eligible project. There are over 18,000 completed new market tax credit deals since the year 2000. So you never know, you might shop at a grocery store that was funded through new market tax credits, or you might go to the doctor at a medical clinic that was previously a new market tax credit project. I'm happy to announce that I can now say yes, the first time ever my community received new market tax credit investment just this year. So I'm excited to take part in this community facility that's now offered to people in my area. All right, well, we've got some people who know that there is a new market tax credit program in a project in their community. That's great. Hopefully it's one that gets great use and is able to serve low-income people quite well. All right. I think we've covered all of this pretty well, but just in summary, the Innovate Fund, we are a new market tax credit CDE based in South Carolina, but we serve these 6 states: West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. We received that $40 million allocation last week, so our total amount of allocation that we will deploy by the end of 2025 is $328 million of new market tax credit dollars put out into these communities. We are so excited at the thought of these new dollars to deploy. We're looking at projects that create quality jobs and address these health and wellness disparities in a community. So you know the impact we have is quite significant. Just to give you a peek at some of the projects we funded recently, we have everything from nuclear waste storage container manufacturing that created a lot of great jobs in a tiny town in Tennessee, all the way to activities that we do on college campuses to build new student activity and community centers. Medical office is shown on here, more manufacturing, food banks. Every CDE's investment criteria and strategies will paint a different picture of the results of the type of projects they fund. But you can see from the Innovate Fund, we've got a great mix. And sometimes I have to learn about manufacturing plastic film, and then the next day I turn around and go visit a food bank. So it's a great job to get to learn about all kinds of different industries that are helping communities. To give you a full picture of CDE partnerships, let's just highlight how CDEs make decisions. So I work as staff for the Innovate Fund, and through my ownership of Terry Becker and the GLDC, I am managed by an operating board. So operating board members are representative of both my ownerships, and they make the investment decisions that of projects that we actually fund. They also help guide strategic growth and other large management decisions. We're also supported by an advisory board. This is more of a technical review committee. So we take projects that we are using as potential for funding, and we bring them to our advisory board before bringing them to our operating board to be vetted, to ask the hard questions. This advisory board is made up of other new markets professionals, economic development professionals, and partners that we've had over the years. And then we're always relying on our community partners and borrowers. These include past borrowers who might consider new market tax credits for additional projects in the future. They might just tell their friends about how successful the project was and why they should consider new market tax credits. And then we look to our banking partners and other professional service organizations who help spread the word of new market tax credits and provide education through events like this. Community representation in management of the CDE is also paramount to what we do. We're always looking to make sure the projects we fund are representing what the community actually needs. And we do that through a variety of ways. First, we look at community plans. We go and see the comprehensive plan for the 2025 year and say, was this manufacturing building located in the downtown really desired by the community for apartments and mixed use, or does the community see this future as continued industrial progress? We look for letters of support that come from local government leaders, and particularly with our nonprofit borrowers, we look for clients and people who actually use the facility to provide letters of support. We perform site visits for all projects that we invest in, and we look for community representation to be present at these site visits. It's great to see boots on the ground, what's actually happening with the new market tax credit dollars and the people it will potentially impact. And then we're always active at attending community events, conferences, trade shows, education events. We always try to get the word of new market tax credit out there, and education is a big part of what we do. And now just to highlight the ever-changing timeline of new market tax credits. So let's paint a picture here. You have the best project. You're going to create 400 jobs, and you only need $10 million from the Innovate Fund. And it's in the right census tract. It's in an Appalachian community. It's non-metro and an underserved state. Wow, that's a great deal. I'm really excited about that deal. But it might be that we're not able to fund it based on the timing of the new market tax credit industry. This is a wonky industry that doesn't have any set deadlines from a year-to-year basis or announcement dates. So just to give you a peek into the past year and a half of the process for new market tax credits, let's look at this. So in June of 2023, we were already selecting projects from our pipeline that we would like to fund. The award for calendar year 2022 new market tax credit allocation wasn't announced until September of 2023. Note that that is about a year behind. At that point in September, when we found out we were successful in receiving new market tax credit allocation, we already had a list of projects that we were ready to fund. So we were able to hit the ground running. In January of 2024, just this year, we closed our first new market tax credit project with that award that was announced in September. So we moved pretty quickly, considering a new market tax credit closing process can take several months sometimes based on complexities of the deal. And now fast forward to September. Since January, we have fully deployed the last round of new markets allocation, which we received $50 million. And we've been building our pipeline, meeting with community leaders, learning about projects, building this pipeline of projects that are eligible for this new award we received last week. So in September, we've already selected these projects as part of our pipeline. And just on Thursday, the award was announced. So it's definitely something that now we're ready to hit the ground running with projects to help fund. And then who knows when the next award will be announced. The next round of new market tax credit allocation will likely be announced in some time of September 2025, but just note it's a double round. So although $5 billion were announced last week, $10 billion of an award will be announced next year. So there should be more CDEs awarded with better, bigger awards. So we're looking forward to hopefully being included in the winner's circle again next year. All right, feel free to put questions in the chat that I'll look at while my colleagues present, but I'm going to hand this over to Lena now to discuss the advantages of being a trusted CDE.
Thanks, Emma. As previously mentioned, I'm Lena Wolf, and I'm the manager of NMTC Compliance and Asset Management here at Cherry Becker. And now, one of the biggest advantages of being an effective CDE is being trusted in all facets of the NMTC space, including the community, trusted by qualifies, industry trust, and what I consider super important, a trusted CDE in the eyes of the CDFI fund. So let's take a deep dive into the importance of trust in each CDE facet here. Community trust is crucial for a CDE because It serves as the foundation for successful engagement, collaboration, and long-term impact. Being trusted by the community ensures that CDEs can effectively identify and address local needs, fostering strong community relationships and participation. Community members are more likely to participate in projects and initiatives with CDE partners that they have established relationship with, as CDEs with established relationships are also more likely to attract funding and resources from all sources. That's because all stakeholders in the area feel more confident in the entity's ability to manage resources. Another benefit of community trust is increasing the likelihood of multi-CDE deals, therefore increasing the ability to have a broader reach and impact in the community by providing more allocation for a larger project. In essence, the community trust is integral to the CDE's ability to effectively serve and empower the community it aims to develop. Now, on to the next polling question. This is question 3. Do you work with or regularly engage with a CDE in your community? So either yes, no, or maybe you're not sure if you might work with a CDE and you don't even realize that they're a CDE at the time. Okay, so it looks like a few of you on the chat on this presentation here do work with or engage with a CDE, and then a decent amount of people are, maybe not sure. So let's, as we keep going, maybe it will spark your idea that maybe you are working with a CDE and you don't even realize it at the moment. So the next important component to becoming an effective CDE is the importance that the qualic B, which is, as Emma mentioned, is the borrower in a new markets transaction, the importance of trust in the from the qualic Bs. Qualic Bs are more likely to partner with a trusted CDE, facilitating smoother project implementation and success. A trusted CDE is seen by the qualic B as being reliable and capable, which helps foster open communication and transparency. Both of those help to make the project planning and execution more efficient. Usually for a qualic B, the NMTC closing process is rather cumbersome and can downright be confusing. And when working with a CDE that is effective with an established qualified closing process, it can help the qualic B understand project goals and expectations, and it reduces stress for all parties for the closing process. Regular and transparent communication from a CDE helps qualic Bs understand the project's roles, which can help lead to a successful project outcomes. Trusted CDEs have solidified their role as a key player in the NMTC space with a proven track record, ensuring effective project execution with quality closing process, effective asset management and guidance, navigating challenges, and strong relationships with all stakeholders. Next, the trust within the NMTC industry is also...
To interrupt you for a second while we're on this slide, we had a question about what specific role do CPAs perform to CDEs, and maybe you can discuss that here at this qualic B slide.
Oh, sure. Yep. So CPAs, actually, Jason's a CPA. I know that. So it just depends. Most CDEs hire quality tax accountants to perform, their audits, their financial statements, their tax returns, things of that nature. Also, sometimes you would engage a CPA or your tax accountant to help make sure that the tax benefits that you're reporting in your financials are correct. I hope that helps answer your question, Claude. So next, let's go on to the trust within the NMTC industry for a CDE. The industry trust enhances the CDE's reputation because it's making it a preferred partner for other entities and stakeholders, which can lead to more collaborative opportunities. Stakeholders need to have the confidence in CDEs to effectively manage and allocate resources for the community development projects. Several advantages include being viewed as a go-to partner for other entities seeking reliable collaborators, opening doors for more joint ventures and projects. As a CDE's credibility increases, it makes it more appealing to investors and other stakeholders. So it gives the trusted CDE often access to shared resources and the ability to have an extensive network within the industry. That helps the CDE have a broader range of opportunities. A proven track record of successful projects and community impact strengthens that trust, and it helps differentiate the CDE from its peer, often offering them a competitive edge in securing allocation and funding. Overall, the trust in the industry amplifies the CDE's ability to collaborate effectively and achieve impactful outcomes. And then the final, and maybe, in my opinion, maybe the most crucial importance is trust within the CDFI fund. It's crucial that CDs are viewed positively by the CDFI fund as it enhances their credibility and their ability to secure funding and support. A CDE that has built a trusted relationship with the fund increases their likelihood of securing that allocation, as it reflects the confidence in the CDE's ability to effectively manage and deploy resources. It also offers several other benefits. It helps signal that a CDE is capable and reliable, making them more likely to receive, as I mentioned, more allocation. The fund's trust reflects confidence in the CDE's ability to manage resources effectively, ensuring that funds are used for impactful community development. Further, being trusted by the fund boosts the CDE's reputation within the industry, attracting more partners and investors, which, going back to the reoccurring theme here, is that this would increase the likelihood of a multi-CDE deal, which therefore creates a larger impact overall on the project. The CDFI fund is likely to also continue to support and provide guidance to aid in the CDE's long-term success. An effective CDE stays up to date and in tune with all the guidance and FAQs produced by the fund. I know the fund puts out a large variety of useful information, along with changes to any of the compliance and reporting needs from time to time, and it can be quite cumbersome at times reading through all their updated guidance. But we have found that working with industry partners and working groups can indeed be a very valuable resource for CDEs to navigate these changes effectively. Usually they can help with interpreting the guidance, identifying key questions, and facilitating communication within the CDFI fund. Adhering to the program requirements and maintaining accurate and timely reporting is a large part of being a CDE in the New Markets Tax Credit Program. A trusted relationship with this CDFI fund may provide the CDE with more flexibility in project implementation, fostering innovative and tailored solutions. An overall trust from the fund is a significant asset as it enhances any CDE's effectiveness and impact in the new market tax credit space. And now I would like to introduce Jason, and he's gonna finish off the presentation talking about advisory boards.
Thanks, Lena. That really great presentation, and I think You really answered Claude's question there kind of even more towards the end. Thanks for calling me out as the CPA of the group, but definitely passionate about the CPA's role here. You know, I'm a senior manager at Cherry Beckert. I started off in public accounting, doing audits for the low-income housing program that Emma mentioned earlier, and kind of made my way into the new market program. And a lot of that CDFI interpretation and compliance that Lena does a lot of hard work on is really kind of where I feel like a CPA firm kind of can fill in and do a lot of the compliance and accounting work for people. You'll also see these large projections for a lot of these CDEs as they go through the new market tax credit process that accounting firms are heavily involved in as well. And thanks, Emma, for your presentation. It's really always refreshing to hear you speak on the topic that you are clearly so passionate about. So really appreciate your time here as well. So I'm going to kind of continue this theme of being a trusted CDE and really thinking about CDEs and how they rely on advisory boards and governing boards to kind of provide those community impacts that Emma's really been talking about and we've been mentioning before. So we're going to spend some time diving into the importance of that advisory board and kind of in leadership of the community development entity. As a starting point / kind of reminder, in order to be a certified CDE, community development entity, we must have a primary mission of serving low-income communities or low-income persons, and also maintain accountability to the residents of those low-income communities. This is primarily done through an advisory board, as we're mentioning. So IRC section 45D outlines kind of an accountability test that we utilize. So in order to meet the test, an entity must demonstrate that it has a minimum of 20% of the board members represent the low-income community. So CDEs are generally doing this through a separate advisory board. And really what we see is an advisory board made up of 100% of persons that are representing low-income communities. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more of what that means in a little bit. But really the 20% is the threshold. But as Emma mentioned earlier, half of the CDEs that applied for new market tax credit allocation last week found out that they did not receive new market tax credit allocation. And in our experience, an advisory board is there to advise and be part of the community. So anything, you know, less than 100% representation from that low-income community really is going to put you in a disadvantaged situation. You know, there should be, if you're going to go less than 100%, there should really be a strong reason why you're including someone who doesn't qualify as a representative of a low-income community. So on to the next slide. So that brings us here, and we really want to focus a bit here on the new market tax credit application and other forms of capital that CDEs might be looking to secure, and how should really play, the advisory board should really play a role in the selection process. So it may be a bit cliche here, but we do want to begin with the end in mind. You know, I'm talking a lot about the application process. You know, what is it we want out of our advisory board, and who is going to provide that? So the new market tax credit application specifically states that community development entities will be evaluated more favorably if they can articulate meaningful involvement in low-income communities and how benefits to low-income persons and our residents are prioritized. So part 2 of the application, community outcomes, question number 27, addresses community accountability and involvement. Specifically in 27A, it points us to table C1, where a community development entity will list out the number and percentage of low-income community representatives on an advisory board. This is also where we can discuss the role the board members play in formulating the investment priorities for the CDE, the pipeline of the CDE, and making the final investment decisions of the CDE. And we'll kind of talk about later how that really dovetails into Lena's presentation on CDFI fund trust, and kind of the CDFI fund. And kind of, if you're newer to New Market World, you'll see that this community development entity is really that intermediary, right? We're intermediary between the CDFI fund and then getting those projects out. So the CDFI fund is really trusting the community development entities to be stewards of those allocation dollars, and they really want to know how you're doing that. And Emma talked a lot earlier about kind of some of the ways we're doing that, but the advisory board is really an excellent place for that as well. And so this section in the application has some minor changes and clarifications coming up here, but it also asks us what we show. It asks us to show how data specifically is used to demonstrate those needs of the community, how the investments we propose will address those needs, kind of like Emma talked about earlier, and how you'll prioritize the investments. So these are all items that I would argue a strong advisory board can help you make quick work of and generate kind of exceptional responses to the CDFI fund. An advisory board can help us provide that framework for prioritization and give that input on that prioritization, which will allow them to identify projects in the communities they serve and bring those projects to the CDE and be an active board member. With all that said, the application also tells us that kind of simply consulting the advisory board is not an example of community engagement, right? We can't just bring in some advisory board members and say, okay, we've got community engagement now. And this is a lot of what Emma talked about earlier, but we need to demonstrate how our investment decisions are being informed by that community engagement. Some examples they provide in the application even are consulting with a local government, economic development agency, or a business association, and soliciting community feedback through public hearings or community surveys. So while we can't simply consult the advisory board, if we do begin with that end in mind, we can identify members who kind of have the roles in these different associations and government agencies that can provide us with the connections we need to perform that community outreach and that level that they're looking for in the application. So I did not want to make this a whole new market application deep dive, but as you can see, really want to just hammer home where the strong advisory board is clearly going to provide us with that ammunition we need to write a winning new market tax credit application and other funding through the CDFI fund. So on to the next slide here, we can also get further clues about kind of what the CDFI fund is looking for in awarding dollars to community development entities through the CDFI certification. So I don't want to get into too much of the weeds here on the CDFI certification process. The CDFI certification process has undergone significant changes. All CDFIs are getting recertified. And so while these changes don't directly impact community development entities, you do not have to be a CDFI to be a community development entity. Seeking new market allocation or CDE certification even, it gives us a signal as to what the CDFI fund is focused on. So I won't go into all the different options for a CDFI fund to meet accountability. I think we can get a lot of insights out of what the fund is requiring. So first, most options for accountability at the CDFI fund level include having an advisory board policy. And this policy has to include a description or purpose or scope of the advisory board, meaning, what is the advisory board going to advise on to the governing board, and how is that going to happen? How is the input of the advisory board going to be documented? Things like meeting minutes and governing board or written reports on the projects. The selection process, how are advisory board members going to be selected and approved, and seeks input into the needs of the target market. So all things kind of we've talked about already. But just the idea of having that advisory board policy, I think, is something that most community development entities might have some policies and procedures in place, but really considering taking the time to pull those things out and make a separate advisory board policy that can kind of identify some of these things that the CDFI fund is looking at, I think is really a great step for a lot of our community development entities. So now a full advisory board policy is not required, like I was saying, but for a CDE, but it is, if I was advising a CDE, I think exploring the creation of that policy would be a great first start, especially if you're looking to get into this space. So the other notable item that the CDFIs are dealing with is a requirement that at least one advisory board member is also a member of the governing board. And so, again, not a requirement at the CDE level, but just this general theme of how is the advisory board actually providing input to the governing board, and how is that governing board taking that input? Or is the advisory board attending the governing board meetings every once in a while? Are they providing some sort of written report on the project? And really want to be able to show that interaction. You know, if the advisory board and governing board are just being two separate things, and we're just getting rubber stamps on one side and the other, then the CDFI fund is not going to look as favorably on the community development entities. So we really want to be able to identify how the advisory board is impacting things, impacting policy changes, impacting the direction of the community development entity. All right. So hopefully that made it clear that a strong advisory board is going to be crucial to the success of building a trusted community development entity. You need to have an engaged advisory board. Without one, writing that competitive application is going to be difficult, and the CDFI fund is clearly focused on the role that advisory boards are playing through everything they're showing us and telling us in the FAQs and in the CDFI certification. So as a reminder, advisory board members for CDEs, kind of talked about this earlier, but they must either reside in a low-income community or otherwise represent interests of residents of low-income communities. So otherwise represent can mean a variety of things. They can own or control a small business located in a qualified community, or be an employee of a non-affiliated community-based or charitable organization if they provide more than 50% of its program activities and services to that low-income community. Other less common options are religious leaders or an employee of a governmental agency or department serving low-income communities can also be or work for an elected official whose constituency is comprised of residents of low-income communities. So there's various ways you can kind of qualify as being representative of the low-income community. But from a more kind of practical standpoint, advisory board members should be made up of champions, right? If I'm starting a CDE, I want to think more about what my focus areas are. You know, if it's just location based, that's great. You can have champions for that location, but really what kind of business types are you investing in? What kind of organizations do you see your award dollars going to? And find advisory board members that can help champion those outcomes and be expertise and provide expertise in those kind of valuable insights that ultimately are going to provide the connections that we need to build a pipeline of projects and really ultimately do the most impactful work in the community. So are you planning on focusing on federal qualified health centers? You know, who on your committee has that expertise? Or do we need to go find someone with that expertise? Are you looking to invest in minor metro or non-metro communities? Who on your committee is kind of part of that community? So make sure each major focus area you have is someone that's kind of championing the program that you're looking to get involved in. And that person will be the representative of the organization and provide feedback for the cause and idea and other important elements of your organization. So some other areas to focus on when building an advisory board, you know, we would include things like having someone with a finance or banking background would usually be very helpful to kind of help with product development and underwriting and things of that nature. Folks with a business background or community impact backgrounds are usually very favorable for projects, the types of projects you're aiming to invest in. So those are the things I would advise kind of focusing on. You always want to be cognizant of the geographical areas as well, as we've talked about. Emma mentioned earlier, do you have a multi-state service area? Do you have board members that worked in that area or live in that area? Want to make sure we're covering all those geographic areas as well. And are people you're asking to be on your board, how many boards are they on? You know, I think you like we talked about, you want to begin with the end in mind. You want to be able to write that application. If someone is stretched too thin, are they really going to be able to provide the inputs and insights that we need on the board? So thinking about how many other activities and boards someone is involved in is a good first step as well. And with that, I think we can move on to the final polling question. Would you like to be further contacted by Chair Beckert on one of the topics covered today? And so if you have any interest in the new market program at all, I and Emma and Lena and our whole team is always just giddy to talk about it. So This doesn't have to be CDE related. If you just want to learn more about the program, we would love to talk to you about it. So you can either reach out, we'll have our contact information up here in a minute, or say yes here and we'll definitely reach out. Just give that just a few more seconds here, get everyone final polling question, get your CPE in. All right. So moving on, just wanted to share a little bit more about Cherry Bekaert and our support in the community and development organizations. You know, we are the strategic financing services group here at Cherry Bekaert. We've spent a lot of time talking about becoming a trusted community development entity today, really a lens on the new market program, and kind of our SFS team is really here to assist you in kind of the complete ecosystem of services, no matter where your CDE might be in the process or your business that needs funding might be in the process. And as an experienced CDEs on the line, can tell you it really is a loop. As Emma kind of mentioned earlier, where CDFI fund just announced the allocation, but with the number of qualified projects greatly outpacing the available credits, it's a really never-ending process as we look to the $10 billion double round in 2025. So on to the next slide. Our team has done hundreds of investments at this point from Alaska to Puerto Rico, and you know, it helps support the people we serve who are really serving those low-income communities. And so that's at least what keeps me going, keeps me motivated in this work. And so if you want to talk further, like I said, please reach out. And this really concludes the final part of our 4-part series on for the summer. And if all those sessions are available on YouTube, this session will be up probably in about a week or so. So if this has sparked something in you to learn more, you can go check out those recorded sessions, or like I said, please reach out. I think that concludes the webinar for today. You know, we do really value your feedback and ask to take part in a short survey here at the end, which appears when you leave the session. So that concludes our remarks for today, but please reach out and be in touch. Thanks, everyone.